Hey everybody, and welcome to another RCT2 review. Today we're looking at Tubiao Action Park by Robbie92 with some help from Lewis and version 1. This is a park from Head-to-Head 8, week number 2, so this was about 4 years ago. And this park went up against one of my parks, Feira, Flamengo, which we looked at back when, but I'll link it below if you'd like to see it. This was the resounding winner, and rightfully so. This is one of probably the best kind of urban Chinese parks I think I've ever seen in RCT. It's just absolutely spectacular. Now, we did touch on this real briefly when we were doing our head-to-head 9 kind of hype video as one of my top 5 parks from Head-to-Head 8 season, but I thought we might as well dedicate a video to its own and enjoy the whole thing. So, per New Elements head-to-head contest, there's only a certain number of squares we can use, so this is what limited the size of this park map, but there's still a lot to be seen in here. In my opinion, the outskirts of this park are almost as interesting as the park itself. But we'll start at the park itself because it is the reason we're here, I suppose. We've got this great entrance using the vertical coaster here, the air-launched tops, and I love this sort of rainbow pattern that we have going on through the whole thing. Actually, this is sort of what inspired my Watch Who's on Park Rainbow Summit overall theme. I just kind of liked that idea and it felt very kind of Asian theme parky to me. But love these gates, love this kind of little planters and everything, and just the general kind of grunge of the whole park. So you can see all the different kind of sidewalk tiles and things like that, which I think is very nice. First thing we come to is some bumper cars here, right on the way in. We've also got the gardener's cart here, which I think is funny because I was at a park in China and got passed on a pathway by a golf cart with a bunch of plants in it, and they were planting stuff just in the middle during the day. Something that I don't think would ever happen in U.S. or European parks, maybe European, but it's just very different, I suppose. The whole park actually has a backstory to it, and there's a great README that came with the downloadable file, so really definitely encourage you to download the file. You can see here these buses with the sort of TPR-esque logo out front is our kind of main characters here. So it's a theme park enthusiast group who's out here visiting this park, and you can get a couple of clickable kind of fun things they've got themselves into here, including breaking the powered coaster here. So you see this derailed coaster here in the middle, this mechanic who's walking around and saying, "Damn coaster tourists." So definitely pissed off. This coaster I really love because it's kind of your standard sort of double helix powered coaster. You see these all over the place in China. It's very, very common. And then let's jump to the other side here and pick up this coaster now that it's in the station. We've got our largest one here. So this is Flying Dragon in Bamboo Forest, which is actually a more or less legitimate translated name for a ride in China. So what I love for this one too, first of all, is how slow the lift hill is. So we're 2 to 3 miles per hour here, which is pretty accurate. These are often stupidly slow. Love the layering details here with the wild mouse track on top for this kind of spine. So this layout is actually a recreation of the standard Chinese inverted coaster layout that you see from Golden Horse, Beijing Shinsansen, or sorry, that's a park, Beijing Shibalai or Beijing Zhuoha companies. So for whatever reason, they all kind of build this same layout. Thankfully, they're branching out a little bit, but it's interesting to see how the different ones do it. But it starts with this big left diving turn into a loop and airtime hill. So the original one actually had a 0G roll there, but it didn't work. So for whatever reason, they removed it for an airtime hill, and now all the subsequent ones have that airtime hill. I think is interesting. So we have 2 slow inline rolls and then this kind of diving helix here. Only difference on this layout to the standard one is that now we're going to cross under the lift hill and brake on the other side. Usually that all happens on this side, but still, I love the sort of janky station building here with the big sign up top, the HVAC unit here on the back of the thing, kind of hidden by this this facade. The signage is great, and this has always been a thing in RCT since you can't do characters. Since the signage doesn't support it, you just kind of use dollar signs and pound signs and percents and everything. And it, from a distance, kind of reasonably looks like some kind of Asian characters, perhaps. So love the game stalls here. We have the skee ball. And just a couple little other stalls. We've got another gardener's cart over here. And then on this side, we have the awesome Space Traveler S&S shot tower, which I love the cars here on top of the roof for the whole thing. So nice, kind of simple design, nice custom top on the roof, and all of that. Over here, we have a ride that shows they've done their research a little bit. So this is a tracked spinning, looping thing, side by side, two of them, which is a pretty standard ride at Chinese theme parks for whatever reason. You don't really see them outside the country. I did ride one of these. It was absolutely terrifying. I was probably well over the weight limit, but it was accurately colored to this kind of obnoxiously bright coloration and everything like that. So pretty interesting. I love the fact that you can actually get on the thing and kind of walk through with the peeps. So even though you're not seeing the motion of it, you're still coming through and having queuing folks and all that. Little kids rides, as you'd expect. Up top here we have an abandoned monorail going across the street to theoretically the rest of the park or something else on this side. But I do really like that whole kind of design here, and then also just the different roof pieces or the signage pieces and all that. Let's pick up this coaster since it's almost off the lift hill. So this is Jetstar Super 3000, which has a kind of Schwarzkopf-esque loop, and then the double corkscrew here. Very nicely put together. For whatever reason, it is actually running two trains, which I don't think I've ever seen in China, so who knows. But these supports are great with the using the helicopter track kind of running through here, and then also the arches for the corkscrews. A little bit of a interesting move here, putting the S-bend between the corks, but this is really one way, since we can't do diagonals so much, or well, we can't at all do diagonal corkscrews in the game. This is a way to get around that. So not necessarily a choice that I typically pick, but I think it looks good in this instance. We have a swinging ship. We've got this double-decker carousel, which I really love this top piece here with the bobsled track, especially because it's not a full 6x6. It's a 5x5, so we have overlapping sections here on the four corners, and they're hidden really well behind this deco, and I think that's done very nicely. A little bit of facade work right here in the middle with some pretty nicely themed buildings here. Again, a pretty nice parapet around the HVAC unit on top, so nice structural details and everything, which I would expect from Robbie as an architect. He kind of knows what's going on there. I did fail to mention, too, what I really like underneath here for this bumper boats, which is unused, as you can see. The fact of this lake, which is very clearly artificial because it's got this great monorail edging for the pond, and it's got this sort of kind of scuzzy look to it. It's just very nicely done. You can definitely see the aging to it, and all of that, which really helps the whole thing. On the back side here, we've got a Tagada, which is one of my favorite flat rides and something that is banned in a number of countries because it's insurance liability. Really, the thing spins around and then just undulates with a piston, and there are no restraints. The whole thing is padded, so you just kind of flop and bounce around and whap into other people, and it's totally dangerous, but it's a lot of fun. So if you ever get to a foreign country that's got one of those, ride it, because I think it's cool. There's a disco in the back, which is absolutely a staple on Chinese parks. And then, of course, our gigantic Ferris wheel. Every Chinese park seems to have one of these. More so Japanese than Chinese, but the Chinese also have it. Pretty fast-moving cars here. They're cruising. But that's not too bad. I think what the star of this show is our little ticket booth down here, which are stacked inverted monorail cars. This is something that I think I first saw from Leon. I don't know if he was actually the first or not, but I still just consistently love this look, and it's very impressive to me how nicely this all comes together. And speaking of layering, it's tough to make something this big as far as this Ferris wheel goes, but we've got a big stack of track here, the Impulse track, the B&M track. It looks like there's some Wild Mouse track in here, all overlaid, and actually it doesn't look too bad. A little glitchy on the cars, but not totally awful, and I think it works all right. What I really do love is the support structure and all this kind of central bits and pieces. Really sits very nicely together, uses some of those oddball slopes and everything else to really fill this out so it looks consistent. I did rip a lot of this off in my Washuzan Japanese park, but Robbie's definitely the OG at this kind of size Ferris wheel, so well done, I think, to that. And then our last ride over here is the haunted house, the horror house, which uses the vanilla skeleton, which I think is kind of fun, standard scenery, and also has some nice roof work on top as well. I do like the consistency of these picket fences throughout, because typically you wouldn't see that sort of thing, I feel like here. It feels almost more I don't know, American vernacular, but it's done very well in this instance. And I guess we did miss our little pedal helicopter ride that goes all around up here, sort of meanders around. Love this awning roof over top of the whole thing, and just these brightly colored railings and everything. It was always something that I found interesting in Chinese parks, is how brightly colored everything is, but how faded and cracked and sort of falling apart it all was as well. So it's definitely kind of a neat look for the whole thing. But stepping outside the park, there's a lot to look at. So first of all, we've got this highway up top where we've got a number of different vehicles moving at different speeds. And if you actually have the in-game audio on, it is kind of a cacophony of roller coaster sounds. It's all running on coaster track, but it's done incredibly well. We've got a streetcar under here. So this is line 12, the Tubiao terminus, that goes back and forth through this whole thing. And you can kind of see it right here coming along. It's very nicely done, using the cables here as streetcar cables up above. Very nicely put together. And then structure-wise, we look at this whole streetscape, I suppose, and it's just fantastic. So we've got some high-rises here with all these exposed decks and AC units and things like that you would really expect. Just all sorts of we call it crunch on but just really kind of minuscule details. I love the fact, we're just going to zoom in for kind of all this. You look at this guy that's got all these different shirts hanging up on clotheslines, and up top there's a whole thing. There's a little garden on top here. There's vertical signs. We've got signs kind of every which way down here. Little shops and stalls. So here's Sichuan Specialties. Here's Bubble Tea. We have our scrolling sign here. Goes in, and it continues on through some of these on this side. Here is a KFC, which you would absolutely expect in China and Japan. I ate at a KFC more than once in China, and actually wasn't too bad. I love these kind of roofs and really kind of nice designs on the whole thing. Once again, showing that you don't need to use the standard Chinese roofs to look Chinese. I love this traffic jam right here because of this accident, and you can see all the little particulate coming up. We've got our crosswalks that are faded. There's all sorts of trash and junk and stuff. These cables that are coming across and hanging down. We're using the cable car cables, but also the scenery cables as well, just so it has this sort of mess to the whole thing. But it's got a certain charm to it, I feel like. Love this facade where it's sort of that standard layer where you have first floor, second floor, third floor, but then overlaid on with different colored awnings and planters and uneven kind of planters. You've got, again, some shirts hanging out to dry, vertical signs. Here's a bunch of different facades on this side, just little shops that are just sort of walk-up counters, but then something you can enter down here. All sorts of bikes scattered around. We've got soda machines. You can see inside this shop right here. Just the detail level on this is staggering. Again, great signage, great detail. I really like these roofs. This set of 3 buildings here is one of my favorite kind of roof scenes, and I do like the fact that this is kind of one building because it's connected in the middle here, but you would see this a lot in China where it was sort of one building form copy paste across, and it made up sort of a whole streetscape scene. And each one of these is a little bit different, so you're not going to see anything repeating. And even though the overall design choices, like signage, like AC units, like shirts, like balconies, are repeated throughout, there's something different in each one. So each one sort of bears its own worth in just enjoying. We can also see some of the backsides here. So there's a couple things that are a little unfinished, but I love this courtyard with this big tree. And some of the other bits and pieces looking into it. This archway that goes through the structure into the courtyard, just really nicely done. Same thing on this one. You can see some bits and pieces here, some of the structural supporting underneath. And then this one's got 2 working elevators in it. Over on this side, we've got some alleyway stuff back here, more bikes, more stairs, more little shops and stalls. And then on the front side here, another one that's just super hyper detailed. I love these little bits of brick in the facade alongside this white kind of stuff. You almost can barely make out what's going on here just because there's so much kind of junk on it. But it's a good thing. Same thing here, McDonald's. Custom sign here using the backslashes, which works surprisingly well. And then our bamboo scaffolding, which is a staple over there. Here's our little bike tour ride, which you can kind of pick up in the middle here, which is kind of a fun little detail. I do like there's a decently wide sidewalk here, like a two by sidewalk. I think sometimes you have a tendency to squeeze streetscapes a little bit, but let's look at this. We've got 2 for a sidewalk, then we've got a bike lane, 2 traffic here, these folks getting run over by cars, a midpoint, 2 more pieces of road, another bike lane, and then a single wide over here that sometimes opens into a double wide. So don't be afraid, I suppose, to take as much space as you need, but I think in general scaling up your size of your buildings, and Robbie and I both do this, which have very kind of tall first floors, tall second floors, and so on. But I think it's a good thing in terms of overall scale when you're building realistically. To scale up a little bit from the peep size, I think it's going to end up looking a little bit better. A couple things to call out on here is this fabulous billboard, incredibly detailed. And if you caught it when we first came in, we've got this very nice Coca-Cola billboard as well here at the subway exit, the Tubiao Metro stop. And we also have a Starbucks coffee right here at the entrance to the park. There's just nice details kind of all along, and the peepability is there. So we've got lots of lively streetscape here with everybody walking around. There's all sorts of shops, so there's people walking with food, and there's tons and tons of little clickable bits and pieces. So all the staff are clickable and have kind of either names or just interesting commentary and stuff to kind of further out that story a little bit. So would highly recommend you download the park and take a look at that. As I said, this was a worthy winner to our head-to-head matchup between my park and Robbie's park. I cannot fault this win because it is one of my favorite parks. Would love to see this done on a larger scale even, but just as it stands, this is a fantastic park and one of my favorites. So we're highlighting it today. That's all for today. So like I said, download the park in the description below, and if you have a park that you would like to see reviewed, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will add it to the list. I'm trying to start to build that list again because I somehow misplaced the old one, so we're going to try and catch up on either some old school and some new school stuff going forward. Until next time, thank you all very much for watching. Have a great day, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye now.